Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Nick, your host of On the Scene with Martini. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget, you are the scene. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Nick, On the Scene with Martini. Today I got Geert from Shai Hulud. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. It's afternoon where I am in Barcelona, Spain, and I'm having my last coffee of the day, and then we're gonna,
A
you
little,
know, after,
little
after this
five
one,
o'clock
I'm
coffee.
probably gonna, what's that?
A little 5 o'clock coffee.
3 p.m. That's my last kind of
Okay.
like that's my last time that I'll have a coffee. After this, it's just tea. If I drink more coffee after that, I'm not super sensitive to it, but I think it does affect my sleep, and I don't mind. At some point you got to quit drinking coffee and switch to something else. So, this is probably my fourth, so my fourth and last for the day.
Hot or iced?
What's that?
Hot or iced? The burning question of the podcast.
Oh, I drink almost always it's hot coffee.
Interesting.
I do like my cold brew from time to time, but I'm not a big like iced coffee drinker. I like the matchas iced. So
Oh, same. I
that's
love a
what I'll
good.
switch next. I'll switch to an iced matcha next.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I feel like Shai Hulud has so much lore and so much history and a rich background just with all your different tours and members popping in and out and original and kind of stuff. So I just want to, before we jump into all your Shai Hulud stuff, just kind of how you got into music and then into like the hardcore scene because you didn't always grow up, you didn't grow up in America per se until a little later, right?
Yeah, well, I grew up. I'm a Dutch citizen, so I was born in the Netherlands, and went through the usual route. So I graduated high school when I was 16, going on 17, which is a pretty normal age in the Netherlands. We start a little earlier, and then I think eventually everything kind of catches up, but it depends on the level of high school you go to, etc. It's a bit of a different educational system in the Netherlands than the U.S. But I graduated, and then I didn't really know what to do. My parents had already talked to me about maybe doing a foreign exchange student year, so I did decide kind of right after my graduation that I liked the idea, and so they signed me up, and I had to do like an intake conversation, and I went through that, and then they're like, okay, yeah, you can, your English is good enough basically to go over. So that's what I did, and they ended up placing me with the family in Wheaton, Illinois, and then that didn't quite work out too well. So eventually, after a few months, I was transferred over to the coordinator of this exchange student program in Chicago, Illinois. So I ended up actually going to high school in Wheaton, which is a suburb of Chicago. And yeah, that's how I finished my student year. So I did I actually skipped out on my prom and to play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, but I did, I ran track. I played American football. I took classes at high school, cut my long hair, and I was kind of a jock, to be honest. And I went to shows. So I saw Catharsis and Ignite play the Fireside Bowl in Chicago. I saw AFI open up for Sick of It All at the Metro. This is kind of like that was my American experience for a year. And then when I came back, my friends had started a band, and they knew that I played guitar, and so that was my first band that I joined. This band was called Redefine, and then maybe like a year and a half later, I already ended up joining Shai Hulud. So it was a pretty quick transition from playing in my first band to becoming the vocalist for my favorite hardcore band ever. It was really weird, but that's the story in a nutshell.
When you were so prior to coming over to like the States, were you
Mhm.
involved at all in like the Dutch hardcore scene, or was it not really that prominent when you were there?
No, we had a really good scene with bands, but it was kind of popping off while I was away in high school, and then it started. That's when it really like we started having a real scene started developing, and I would say honestly, like probably most of the credit for that goes to the Belgian guys, because they had this scene called the H8000 crew, and all of these bands, these metalcore bands, were coming out of there. So you had bands like Liar and Congress and a whole bunch more that were playing this kind of super metal hardcore, which later, bands like Archangel's kind of like second wave of, actually, I guess kind of Archangel's still kind of first wave, but there were a lot of bands that were doing that sound, and that was what was making its way up north where I was living in the Netherlands, and that's what we wanted to play as well. And so we would drive down to Belgium for these shows to attend these shows and then go back up. That was our weekend. So when I came back from the States from my exchange student year, I joined, my first hardcore band, and we were just going to shows every weekend. And just, I was 18 and I had my driver's license and my friends had cars. And so we were, sharing rides and just going to shows and practicing and organizing our own. That was my first few years. That's how I got into it.
Talking about how like you saw like AFI and like sick of it all and stuff. Obviously
Yeah.
in the States, especially then, stateside hardcore music was very accessible, right? Was there
Mhm.
any bands that came over from the States that you remember seeing in Belgium or in the Netherlands that you were like, this is awesome? Like this is a show that kind of sticks out?
Oh yeah, Morning Again with
Okay.
Damien Boyle on vocals. That was like seeing my idol at the time. So if Damien ever listens or whatever, hears this or whatever, huge like thing for me to see them play with him on vocals. It was awesome. I knew every word. I was right up there up front. Actually, just the other day, I put all those records back on, and I was like, I still have I still know all the words, and I still love the lyrics. But he at the time was, I think, probably one of the most the better vocalist, I would say. Like his voice on the Hand of Hope is just fucking awesome, and his lyrics are really good. Um, Definitely better than the average like hardcore lyrics, right? Because all
Yeah.
at the time, all the hardcore lyrics in that kind of mid '90s era, it was all like brotherhood, unity, all this kind of stuff. And Damien wrote these heavily political lyrics, and like I think Morning Again were one of the first to write about like pro-life topics
Hmm.
or against pro-life topics, and they were writing about homosexuality and like bringing that topic to hardcore for the first time, and that all those things were, and also a lot of credit obviously to Earth Crisis for putting that on the agenda as well. But they were, for me, Earth Crisis was what got me into hardcore, and Morning Again and Culture also, those two bands from South Florida were bands that got me into really into metalcore hardcore. And then it ended up, funny enough, is that Damien Moyle was the original vocalist for Shai Hulud. So I ended up, kind of taking over as third vocalist for Shai Hulud.
When you first started, what was like the moment that you got introduced to the scene then? Like hardcore, punk, metalcore? Like was it like a
My first show.
well, kind of, or like was it like a friend that like you were listening like I feel like the most common story is like there was a kid at school that was like really cool that you want to be friends with and they gave him a track. Like I've heard that story a few times, but that's your story, Tom. That's fine
My
too.
story, my story is I was a metalhead, long hair, army boots, death metal shirts. I listened to metal first, and I'm still much more of a metalhead than a hardcore kid when it comes to my musical taste. But I love hardcore shows so much more than metal shows. And the energy of hardcore shows still to this day are just unmatched. It's just a completely different kind of energy. Um, and so I was a metalhead, and I was getting into skateboarding. My friends were getting into skateboarding, and we had a local record shop with this skateboard guy who, like I came in wanting a Napalm Death record. And he goes, no. And then he hands me Gorilla Biscuits. And I'm like, what is this? And, it's like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, but this is trumpets. What am I listening to? But he's like, take it home, listen to it, come back to me, which is pretty, like that's a pretty cool thing to do for a record shop owner to say, take the CD that I'm going to sell in this store, which at the time they were selling these things for $40. Listen to it, and if you don't like it, come bring it back. But he kept trying and trying and trying. So shout out to Tonus for getting me into hardcore and exposing me to this stuff. That was kind of my toes, dipping my toes in the water. And then my best friend at the time was my main he was really in hardcore more than he was in metal. And so, you know, when he showed me Destroy the Machines, I was like, what the fuck is this stuff? Like, if it sounds like this, I'm in. I'm in.
When you were talking about also like being the going from like playing in your first band to like being the vocalist of your favorite, like throughout that time, how did you get approached to take over the reins for Shai Hulud?
I didn't get approached. I you know, kind of like bullshitted my way into the band.
Oh, really?
Asked. I never sang for a band before. It made no sense. The story is, in short, I went to see them on tour in Europe, in Arnhem, in the Netherlands. They were playing the show with Matt Fletcher, who at that time was just filling in on vocals, but really he was actually had just joined the band as a guitar player, and he ended up actually spending most of his years as co-songwriter, mostly as the bass player for the band. But at the time, he was filling in on vocals. So I saw them play with, you know, a fill-in drummer with Matt on vocals, almost shot vocals, and whatever. It was just not a great show with one because Shai Hulud's double guitar stuff with these counter melodies and rhythms, and it was just Matt Fox on guitar. But okay, it was my favorite band, so I had a great time. I ended up having a conversation with those guys. A couple days later, I called them up in Belgium. This is pre-cell phone, pre-Google Maps, pre any of this stuff. So I called the venue and asked if I could speak to Matt, and he picks up the phone. He's like, "Hello." I'm like, "Hey, you remember me?" And he's like, you know, and of course he didn't remember me because
He's like, "What do you want?"
we had a conversation outside, and he's like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "I was wondering if I could come on tour with you guys and like just follow you around and maybe write a report for a zine." And he's like, "Okay, sure." And the kind of like the conversation was like 1 minute, but I got the green light, so suckered my parents into lending me my mom's car, and then drove out to Germany, followed them around for a couple days, and somehow ended up doing a sound check with them that ended up with me taking the vocals for that show. And that led to me basically joining Shai Hulud in the first week of tour and then becoming the main vocalist on the European tour. And that was also the story that went around. It's like Shai Hulud picked up some random Dutch guy and he's now their vocalist.
I have a few questions from them. Did you act, were you actually a part of a zine, or is that just a way to bullshit in? Like, were you right? Like, did you have a little bit of a background with that?
I no, I didn't, but I did have sincere plans to submit like a piece for one of the Dutch hardcore scenes. So
Gotcha.
zines. So it wasn't like, yeah, the intention, my intention was, okay, I'm just gonna join. And there was like there was a little bit of a joke that Matt had made to me saying, "Hey, why don't you take vocals? You seem to know all the words," and that stuck with me. So in the back of my mind somewhere, there was that seed, and I was like, I could do this maybe, but but of course, I didn't want to admit to myself that that's why I was going out there. I was like, well, you know, I'm just going to follow him around and write a zine report, take some pictures. So that's what I was doing. I was like taking photos of the tour and writing some stuff down, some notes. And I thought that that could be cool content for someone who had a zine. But then things ended up going differently. And so I never wrote that report.
Well, it looks like it worked out for you at least. I would say comfortably that the your career Shai Hulud probably outweighs the article that you were planning on originally writing.
Yeah, I ended up, you know, on an actual record and some releases, and we toured all over the world. And I rejoined the band obviously a couple years ago now. We just did a whole bunch of tours. So it's been fun, and it's obviously one of my favorite memories of my early 20s is being in the band and touring.
When you went to sound check, you participated in sound check and did vocals and stuff, and then that night you did your first show as the
Yeah,
vocalist.
yeah, same night. Yeah.
What was it like? I mean, obviously you were saying about how like you'd sing the songs, right? But now you are the one singing the songs. Like people are listening to you. Was there a different type of nerves, or was it kind of just like if this is a fun thing, I have to nail it?
Both.
Both.
And the thing was, the first couple shows, I was still doing it together with Matt, so we were doing dual vocals.
Oh, okay.
There's a video out floating around on YouTube of this show. It's horrible. Like I'm absolutely awkward, and with like, you know, I'm just like, we're both horrible. But yeah, I mean, it kind of learned the ropes, and years of touring kind of made me much better. So I think I made up for my goofiness with, sheer enthusiasm.
When did you find like your kind of style, like to present your vocals and stuff, like your flair on stage?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So the thing is, I don't think I actually knew how to command or tap into my voice and my presence until after I quit Shai Hulud, which is funny to say because we played tons of shows.
Hmm.
But I think I just had a bag of tricks and I didn't really have the same presence. It was always a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm, but like it was when I quit Shai Hulud and I was, let's say, allowed to, and I joined my friends' metal band, and I for the first time had to write all the lyrics by myself and come up with all the vocal patterns that I found my way of doing it, because I was always singing Matt Fox's vocal patterns and Matt Fox's lyrics. And so, and if I contributed a lot of lyrics and music to the That Within Blood Will Tempered record, the album that I ended up singing on. But as far as finding my voice, if you will, that was
Hmm.
actually afterwards. And so when I rejoined, I actually came back in with that, and which I think has helped me. And I think maybe that's also why people are like have been saying overall that I haven't skipped a beat, and it's maybe because I'm more comfortable now with finding my delivery.
So, and if you're not okay talking about this, I don't like know the story or background. I tried to do minimal research, so everything's fresh for me too. When you like with your departure of Shai Hulud, was there any like specific reason of why you like left or wanted to leave?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like the fifth time that I was ready to quit, and I just said it out loud, and I was like, "Fuck this!" It was
Yeah.
like in a parking lot in Austin, Texas, half shouting match, frustrated. It was young guys all living together in one house, writing together all the time, never getting a break from each other, and being on tour and on the road 200 days out of the year. And with a lot of financial pressure, just everybody had to pay their bills and everything relied on the band. And that's so hard. And then, you're growing up and all this other stuff. So, no finger can be pointed in any one single person's direction. It was just too much. And I think there were some differences among the band members on who should manage what and do what, and I thought that I knew better. And Matt, was heavily involved in all these things, and we weren't mature enough yet to understand how to work as a team. We tried, and we're all decent people with good intentions, but it just wasn't a good team. And honestly, that's so hard in any band. All right, and so yeah, I mean, and that's why I think things are working out now because we're all kind of much more comfortable with who does what.
Do you have so like when you left then, you've been in band since obviously your rejoin of Shai Hulud. Was it more so let me get a career while also being able to play shows, but not having to have the financial strain of just being in a band, kind of as well? Like post departure, if that makes sense?
Oh, okay, so is the question about when I quit Shai Hulud and then
Yes.
uh,
Like your post Shai Hulud, like what you did essentially with your life. Like was it like career then music still, or was it still music then career for you?
I quit and then I finished all of my touring commitments for another 8 months or so. I didn't like it wasn't like a I've always felt like okay, we committed to all these tours and these shows, and so
Hmm.
I'm gonna ride that out. But I had said that I was done, and so basically I think I quit in November, December of the year before, and then I wrote it out until 2004 for another 5, 6 months or maybe more. Um, but I finished somewhere July 2004, and then I pretty much immediately moved back to the Netherlands and started uni. So I had like 2, 3 months, crashed with my friends for a while, crashed with my parents, and then eventually, like 2005, I found myself a room and was just a full time student out of bands and everything.
I
So
gotcha.
yeah, so I studied
With
philosophy. I didn't really have any sort of aspirations musically yet, and also no idea of what I really wanted. I just thought that philosophy was an interesting thing to study, and I went really hard on that. Like, I really went pretty deep with it. Never got my degree, but first few years, I was a straight A student and studying all the time, and just went really, really deep.
Do you feel like studying philosophy helped you like write your own lyrics in the future then?
Yeah, because essentially it's just the first couple years is basically you just learn how to write. If you finish your first year at uni in the Netherlands, in any case, doing studying philosophy, you're automatically enrolled as a journalist if you want to be at journalism school,
Oh.
because it's all you do. You just write, 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 essay after essay after essay.
But that kind of like did that kind of just tire you out then towards the end of it, all the writing?
No, I enjoyed the writing. What I didn't enjoy was the academic hair splitting of concepts and like playing out authors and quotes against each other. I just felt that that was totally useless. So I enjoyed reading philosophy and learning about the ideas, and then trying to think of how to implement them or what that could mean to develop a philosophy of life, if you will. And there's lots of facets that I found fascinating, but none of it did seem like, it just seemed like a very kind of like ivory tower thing. And I'm much more practical in the real world kind of thing. I'm more of an entrepreneur, which I discovered much later in my life. But yeah,
When you popped out of Shai Hulud then, were you still did you kind of like stay involved in the hardcore scene or like pay attention to like Shai Hulud or anything, or was it kind of just like you wanted to stay away from it?
mostly stay away from it. But I was in a band called The Architect, which we later rebranded to Miscreants, and we recorded some music, released an EP, and we did tour for a few years. So between 2006 and 2009, I guess, maybe 2008, I was in another band, and we toured and etc. But that was like a really good group of friends playing, and or we became a really close group of friends, and we did have some ambitions, but it was one of the, like, right around that times when everybody started getting their first jobs and etc etc, and I discovered my singer songwriter side, and I started. Written some songs. And I started singing, actual singing, and so I did the Black Atlantic, and that ended up being my main musical career for about 15 years. So I ended up transitioning into indie rock and like full on indie hipster flannel shirt, stuff.
That's funny. That's how you describe it. You went from army boots and death metal shirts to flannels.
Yeah, yeah, I ran the whole gamut of that.
Yeah, that's an okay. That's just like character development. But now, like, it looks like you probably have a happy medium now.
It's funny. I think listening to so much indie and playing that scene for so long actually turned me off to that, and now I'm back into heavy stuff. But I kind of like, I would say halfway through the Black Atlantic career, I was like, oh man, I miss listening to metal, and I started listening to all these obscure black metal bands and hardcore bands, and just rediscovering that. And that's the majority of my musical um, menu these days, is just mostly metal.
With the Black Atlantic, then, did you like what were some artists that got you into it? Just because like transitioning from metal to hardcore to the indie scene, which like involved in both, so it's easy for me. But like, what was some artists that kind of geared you towards that?
The era that I wrote my first few songs, etc., was like Fleet Foxes, Bon Iver, Grizzly Bear, etc. And that was the direction musically that I went in. Um, and I would say to this day, Robin Pecknold, the singer songwriter for Fleet Fox, is probably my number one musical inspiration, and Daniel Ross, and the guitar player singer for Grizzly Bear, is my second, or maybe the other way around. Doesn't really matter. And my third most important, like, formative musician is Matt Fox. Like, I still have, like, I do weird stuff and weird timings just because I think I listened to too much Shai Hulud when I was young. So those three, and that was the kind of stuff that I listened to, but it wasn't what got me into it. Like, my transitional years was actually listening to a lot of Brit rock. So it was like Elbow was the band that, like, the kind of weird
Hmm.
Brit rock band that I really loved for years, and still one of my favorite bands. and I so it was like, Coldplay, Elbow, Doves, like that Brit rock era. And I thought that I was going to do that, and then I ended up moving farther away from that and really going more folk.
When you were oh, I'm just curious. This is for personal. Do you still listen to any indie rock or like kind of like indie punk at all? Because I feel like the scene overseas for over not stateside is getting a lot better. Like one of my favorite bands is Fontaines. Do you listen to?
Okay, don't.
Oh, you don't? I'll send them to you afterwards. But I think you'd like them. It's like the perfect mixture too, and I think it's cool that I mean Cage the Elephant kind of does it too in their own way, like
Mm-hmm.
with just like the punkiness into
Mm-hmm.
the indie music. Like I don't know why that happy medium makes me happy. I'm glad
Right.
to see stuff like that kind of crossover.
I think I spend 90% of my time digging through blogs and listening on Bandcamp to metal. That's what I enjoy. Really enjoy discovering more like heavy stuff. And every once in a while, I'll find something that I'm like, oh, this is cool, like indie stuff. But I have kids, and like my daughter is 16, and we have a very similar musical taste, not in the heavy department, although she does like her Deftones, but
Fair
like
enough.
in that on that side, and she sends me a ton of stuff. So I'm like fully hip with some of the. I also like hip hop. I also like R&B. My musical taste is super broad these days. It's not, I would say my bread and butter is metal. There's definitely hardcore in there, and then the rest is anything, really.
I gotcha. So when you were for people that don't know, you were the ex-CEO for Chessable, a
Yep.
pretty prominent chess company.
Yeah.
Um, when you learned chess while you were touring, right?
Hmm.
Can you kind of tell us a story about how that started? Like what prompted you to want to learn chess or interest you into chess and kind of how you progressed through there?
Well, so my mom taught me chess. Then by the time I was like 9 or 10, my brother was always better at chess, still is. Uh, so my younger brother, by a year, him and I played like the school team. So like in primary school, that's what we did. Like we played in the chess team, and he was board one, and I was either board two or three, depending on what made sense strategically. So we had these team things. Then in high school, I literally didn't play any chess and didn't ever. And then okay, through that period of time, I ended up joining Shai Hulud, and so I was in I had one show. It was in Pennsylvania actually, and we played a show with One King Down, and I don't, which is Rob is this was a singer for One King Down, who's also Most Precious Blood, and he was big into chess. And so whatever, before the show, just sat down and he was like playing chess or studying chess, doing something. And I was like, oh, let's play. And we played, and we actually were a pretty equal level. And that turned into a little bit of a rivalry. And that's how I got into chess, and how I was like, wait a minute, this guy keeps every time I would see him, he would be studying chess and he would be better than me. And I was like, and so I had to be better than him. And so then I would pick up chess books, and then so then that's what I did up in tour. So I ended up there. We ended up having this rivalry. And I would see him at Hellfest, and he would crush me with some new opening that he learned. And I was like, what is this shit? I need to know how to beat you with this. And yeah, so then I started studying chess on tour. I'd bring chess books and a little magnetic chessboard. And actually, towards the end of Shai Hulud, when it was like 2003, I was really heavy into it. I was just working my little job and then studying a couple hours a day. And I was buying chess books with the money I made at the restaurant and from touring. That's pretty much what I was doing. So I was into the lore and into the chess thing, but I didn't really join a club or enter that scene and for another 20 years. My
Th-
chessable journey started almost 20 years after that.
This is like a complete nerd question, but what are your favorite openings? Do you have any that like really stick out to you?
Everybody that knows me with chess knows that I play 1b3 with white, which is the Nimzo Larsen opening, and then I would say probably a little bit of a specialist in that opening, in the sense that like at a club level, I know that opening very well. So I play 1b3 with white, but I play very pretty much everything. But if you look at my online games, it's like 90% 1v3 with white. And with black, I'll play a lot of stuff, but depending on the time control. But against 1e4, I play the Alekhines defense, or I play the Karl Khan. And actually, those things tend to transition in similar structures very often. And then if it's d4, I just make up something, but most of the time it's like an accelerated Queen's Indian defense. So that's like stuff with knight f6 and then b7, and then I get similar structures as I do with the Nimzo Larsen. So I'm just playing. I try to play colors reversed kind of stuff.
Did you, and I have like a slew of questions about this, so if I'm a little off order, bear with me. But for starters, did you ever play anyone like pretty prominent like in the chess scene?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was the CEO for Chessable, so I met a lot of these really strong chess players. So I've played some really big names in the chess world. But I think my favorite memories are playing with Grandmaster Simon Williams. And we did like I don't know if you're familiar with what they call hand and brain, but hand and brain is where one person says the move, but you can't say pawn to e4. You can only
Hmm.
say pawn, right? So the brain says the piece that needs to be moved, but the hand has to move the piece. So there's two people, and you play against two other people. So, and I played. My team was Simon was the brain, and I was the hand. So I had to understand what he was trying to play.
I
But
gotcha.
you're not allowed to communicate. He's only allowed to say pawn. It can be any pawn. I have to decide based
That's
on the position
cool.
in front of me, right? So
Yeah.
this is really fun. So one of my favorite memories was playing with Simon because he plays this insanely aggressive chess, which is not my style. And so we were playing together, and he's suggesting pieces where I'm like, what? you
Yeah.
know, because he sees stuff that I don't see. So that's probably one of my favorite memories.
He's like, this will work. Just be the hand. That's what he's basically saying.
Yeah, it would probably like it's better to have the grandmaster be the hand because they can kind of correct if you're thinking of something the wrong
Yeah.
way. But that's actually what made it fun because we were doing a grandmaster paired with a club player versus a grandmaster and a club player. And so we were, two club players playing against each other, and the grandmasters were kind of like, giving us the direction to play in.
What was your highest like elo then?
My like official FIDE rating has been something close to 1900, like 1870
Oh,
or
geez.
something. And my online rating on chess.com has been over 2000. Yeah, and lead chess it's been over 2200 in the faster time controls, right? But in
That's
classical it's been like peak probably 1870, currently like 1800.
so are you a more Blitz fan then? Then
I only play bullet and blitz these days. That's and I like that better. It's more intuitive.
yeah.
And it plays to my strengths because I know my openings, so I can get out the first moves pretty quickly. Yeah, I enjoy that a lot. I still play every day, like bullet probably 15 games a day. Just
Oh,
mostly on the
really?
toilet. Yeah, sure. I go to the toilet and like okay, put my let's play some bullet.
Yeah,
Downtime chess. It's like okay,
yeah.
I'm waiting on the bus and I have 3 minutes to kill. I'll play two games. That's like so it's a lot of throwaway stuff, but it keeps me engaged with the game and that because I'm still playing all the time and actually I just started a new chess startup, so I'm still heavily into chess.
That's awesome. I I this is kind of a observation, but just like looking at your Instagram, and I learned this a few years ago, but I never knew about how like political, if you will, the chess scene was. Like there's a lot of people in the scene that are also heavily into politics. I went to a talk with Gary Kasparov, and
Mhm. Oh yeah, he's a liberal, like far, like pretty right, but liberal thinker. Like not like
yeah,
far right, but like I would say maybe libertarian. He leans that way. I met Gary and I worked with him. Very nice guy. Super super
he's super cool
yeah, super
and
smart.
super intelligent too. Did you see like? Did you ever obviously like in the hardcore music scene in our scene? There's like pretty strong crossover, especially now with
Yeah,
politics and music. Did you notice
sure.
that at all in chess at all? Or was there like any type of movements that you're aware of? I'm just curious. That's more of a personal question.
No, I think most chess players don't give a shit about politics. And they don't, they just care about chess. Like
Yeah,
they only care about politics if it affects their chess. And if it just, there's a few, of course, and
mhm.
sometimes uh, some are more engaged than others, but most don't care. No.
Fair enough. Going from there too, then you were outside of Shai Hulud. What prompted you to come back to Shai Hulud?
Um, the 20-year anniversary of That Within Little Tempered. I just thought that was something to celebrate and we should do a show. And so I just reached out to all the guys that played on the record. I said, let's play a show. And everybody was in right away. Like no hesitation. It was like instant yes from everyone. And then we just needed to find the right time. And we ended up locking it in at Furnace Fest, which was a really good idea. That we waited almost a full year. So actually, technically, we played the 21-year anniversary of That Within Little Tempered. Um, but yeah, it was just a really great show, and that gave me enough um, energy and enthusiasm to want to do more.
Did so Shai Hulud, sorry, there's been the Shai Hulud lore and timeline goes pretty
Mm,
deep. Was
yeah.
there like a time, so when you guys went back to do the anniversary show, right?
Hmm.
The current band isn't that still same lineup. There has been adjustments since, right?
So we're all the musicians from the That Within Little Tempered record, which
Mhm.
was Matt Fletcher on bass, which actually he wrote more music on guitar than he played bass, but pretty much after the record, Matt Fletcher ended up being the bass player for all the tours. Matt Fox on guitar, main songwriter and lyricist. Tony Tintari on drums, and me on vocals. And we actually didn't have a steady second guitar player, but a really good friend of ours and like super fan and basically like permanent band member since I left has been Eric Dellen. So Eric actually, when I quit, Eric took over and played the drums and did the vocals on the demos that were ended up being sent to Metal Blade and ended up getting them signed to Metal Blade. So Eric's been around pretty much since before I quit and has been like heavily involved with Shai Hulud. So Eric ended up, even though he is the current bass player, he ended up learning all the songs on guitar because he's that good. He plays drums, he
That's
does vocals.
crazy.
He's the only member in Shai Hulud who's held every position in the band. But specifically for the reunion show, he learned all the guitar parts, and so that was the lineup for Furnace Fest. And the current lineup is Matt Fox on guitar. We have Mo on drums, me on vocals, and Eric is technically still the bass player, but he's super busy, works in corporate law. And then we kind of have like fill-in guitar players come through. And when Eric can't tour, a really good friend of mine plays bass. So for these past few tours, it's been either my good buddy Stein playing bass, and when Eric could join, he would play. And Eric, can play either guitar or bass. So he's kind of switches per tour depending on who we have. We did the last couple of U.S. tours with Pete from Unearth on guitar. So
Okay.
yeah, and then we had this guy Daniel from Horse the Band. He was doing the drums when Mo couldn't do drums. So we have a kind of a collective of musicians around the band that jump in and out depending on the duration of a tour and whether people's schedules work out.
That's good. And you probably never notice a sense of um decrease in quality too. Like especially since like it probably happens so often, like changing different parts and stuff. Like with like your
It's
live performance.
it's surprising, but we've been so lucky to have a talented pool of musicians playing. And in fact, I think people were saying how good the band was on these tours, and that's just because we've been super lucky to have guys like Daniel and Peter come in and just play and be absolutely phenomenal musicians. And so then we don't skip a beat, And then of course when we play with Mo, Mo's been in the band for over a decade, and Eric, and then you just have this like natural. I just show up and scream, but these guys are holding all that stuff down.
When you were so like when you came back, you played your anniversary show at Furnace Fest, right?
Yeah.
After that, you were saying about how you guys kind of stayed and like you stayed in the band post
Hmm.
that. What was some of your goals that you wanted to do with Shai Hulud since then?
Record. So that's what we're working on, but it's slow going. We wanted to do some tours, which we did. We did Europe, we did UK, and we did a couple of US tours. And we just announced our next run of UK European shows. I don't know when this podcast episode comes out, but I think we're really close to announcing our Japan tour with Taken. So, if the podcast comes out in the next week, then maybe I jumped the gun, but
It won't be.
probably. Okay. So then
Yeah,
in that case, by the time this podcast episode comes out, the Japan tour will be announced. We're gonna go straight after Europe. We're gonna go to Japan, and do 5 shows there, which I'm super stoked about. And that's pretty much it for shows. And then other than that, we're just writing and just waiting mostly on Fox to, send demos over.
I know that you guys played US last year, right? Any plans on playing it again this year? Or do you guys try to stagger it a little bit, especially with you being
Uh,
over in Barcelona?
I was really eager to do more, but with all the stuff that's happening with all the immigration policy in the States and everything,
That's fair.
I pulled out. I just didn't want to even risk anything. Like the stories that are coming out. I have 3 kids, and
Hmm.
so if I end up in some sort of weird situation, even though I have all the work papers and all the immigrant, etc., it seems like they don't care. It seems like they don't
Mm.
care whether
They
you have
don't.
legal papers and etc.
Yeah.
I cannot risk going to the United States and then ending up in a freaking detention center for no reason other than that some person decided that I'm illegal in the United States, even though I'm legal,
Yeah.
and then not be able to go back to my kids and my family and like support. And so I don't want to go. And that's what I unfortunately that's what I had to tell our US agent who was ready to do more. And I just don't feel safe enough to do that. Europe and UK, I feel fine going to Japan. Maybe we'll even go to South America this year, but I don't want to. Like maybe when the political situation changes and America's stance on immigration changes, I'll feel more comfortable going. But currently, I just feel really uncomfortable.
And that's totally valid. And I appreciate an honest answer rather than, oh, we just didn't have any plans kind of deal.
No, no, we had stuff, and
Yeah.
I said, and I was the one pushing for it, and and
Yeah.
then and then I said, guys, I'm sorry, I had I was like a lying awake at night about it, and I was like, I can't do this, I can't do
It's
this.
not worth it. I mean, obviously, like music to you is your passion and it's been your life, but at the same time, like your family is your life. Like,
I have to work and I have kids in high school that I want to send through high school into
yeah.
college. And I can't, like, I don't even know what I would do. Like, if I was suddenly in some detention center because some guy decides that I should be there. I don't, that situation is just mind boggling to me what's going on. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, to be honest. Um, so on top of that then, so we have your European tour. You guys are going like all over. And then you guys are playing a few festivals, right? I have Rip Fest down here.
Yeah.
And was there another one? I feel like there's another one.
Yperfest, which is
Yes.
like a legendary traditional Belgian hardcore festival, which this is my first time playing it, actually.
Oh,
So I'm
awesome.
actually stoked because that was the thing as when I told you that when I was like a teenager going to Belgian shows, that's the festival we'd go to Yperfest. So
Oh,
I
really?
finally I finally get to play it.
Yeah, after
Um,
all that time too. Right. You
after 30
probably
years, I get to go and play Yperfest. So I'm actually pretty stoked about that one. And then we've got this Hardcore Help Foundation festival in Germany, which is run by a bunch of people that I think do amazing work. So they raise money through this festival for a bunch of different charities, and
Mhm.
that's the whole. It's a nonprofit organization. The people behind that are from this area that Ludenscheid, where I've played a lot because I released some music through a label that is from that town. And so I ended up playing that festival a few times with Black Atlantic, actually,
Mhm.
never with Shai Hulud. And so they invited us to come play. So we're doing that one. Yeah. So some cool. Oh, and we're playing Return to Strength in Querfurt, which is a cool fest, like real hardcore festival, like smaller. So we got some cool fests.
Do you guys do you prefer playing like smaller shows or playing like your actual tour in comparison to fests? But I also do know that like I feel overseas the fests are a little bit more. I don't want to say free, but the the crowd has a little bit more freedom to do things. Here, there's always barricades and there's always, you can't really sing along with the crowd. Do you kind of notice a difference in your performance or your willingness to do it?
We're not. Shai Hulud's not really in a position to, tell festivals where, or even like ask for. We get asked, but we're playing kind of smaller festivals.
Hmm.
And I think that's because the band for well over a decade was kind of inconsistent, both in the touring, in music release, and all this other stuff. And so we have a lot of work to do to kind of build back up, which I actually enjoy because I
Yeah.
actually enjoy playing smaller shows. So for me, playing a 150 to 250 cap venue is great. I love the energy in those venues. And so if we get to play a couple of medium sized festivals with a few thousand people there, that's cool. Like I like playing to that size festival. I've played bigger festivals where there's barricades and a massive stage, and you see this massive crowd. I don't know if that's Shai Hulud. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that I wouldn't play those shows, but like I like when people are hanging off the rafters and jumping off the side of stage and just like throwing themselves up front, sing along. That's like hardcore for me. And so, festivals are nice also, but it's a different energy.
What was your biggest festival you played with? Probably Black Atlantic, I presume.
Yeah, I've played some big festivals at the Black Atlantic, like 30,000 people. They have this in the Netherlands. We have these festivals around May 5th, which is like the official liberation day for the Netherlands from World War II
Hmm.
when the war ended for us. And so every year, all across the Netherlands, they have these huge festivals that are free to attend, in usually in the big city parks. And so the Black Atlantic has played a couple of those. So that's when you're playing in front of a massive audience of like 30, 40,000 people that are,
That's crazy.
and you play early in the day, right? Like we weren't headlining this. We're just like kind of early in the day, but there's still like, 20,000 people there
Yeah.
watching. Shai Hulud played one of these in 1999, where we played one of those big festivals and they had like the small stage. And it was kind of cool because the small stage was opposite the main stage. And I remember us starting and like 20,000 people were focused on that main stage. And then we started, and then you see like 20,000 people just going to turn around and look at you. And we were just like, and I jumped off stage and like ran around the crowd with my mic. I don't remember what I did, but it was fun.
That's funny.
So that's probably the biggest.
Yeah, I feel like you can't really top that unless you're like playing like Glastonbury or like Primavera or something. Those are probably like a good size, I would say.
Yeah, Primavera is in my hometown, right? But I live in Barcelona, so
Very fair. That'd be cool if a full circle moment you guys played Primavera. That'd be crazy.
I doubt that would happen. They tend to not really focus on that kind of that genre. So
Yeah. They popped, I think Turnstile played there last year. I think that was like the most they've done so far was their Turnstile there. So
yeah,
maybe there's a
but
little progression there.
sure. I mean, I think Turnstile are opening doors for hardcore right now and creating a whole new generation of hardcore kids, which is awesome. Great band. I love the last couple of records, and they bring an amazing energy. So I hope that we're going to see a lot of new young kids entering the scene. And in fact, what I noticed touring the States also, there's some really really good new young bands, and like the scene's in a good place as far as like kids being into it. I loved seeing all the energy. That was crazy. We played the show in Boise, Idaho, and like all the young kids were singing the words along. It's like one of the best shows of the tour.
I was gonna ask that. That was kind of gonna be like my final question. Being with Shai Hulud for all of these years, coming back and you're going to these shows, you're playing, you're doing like these full tours, you're probably seeing like kids now singing every word or doing every word. What's it like for you to be on the opposite side, growing up, seeing all the kids still singing and learning all the lyrics and stuff?
Awesome, like the way it's supposed to be. But now we've got the dads and the moms bringing their kids, so
Yeah.
it's like literally we had this like happen almost every night on tour. Somebody would bring their 10-year-old, 12-year-old son or daughter to show with a Hulud shirt, and they've like know the words. And it was just that's like I'm just so thankful for that. That's like so awesome. So yeah, I just love that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you joining.
Yeah, I had a great chat, and thanks for all the questions. I hope that whoever watches this or listens to it, had a good time listening to me rambling.
Absolutely. And I love a good ramble, so you're never rambling when you're here.
I hope we got through the 10-minute chess section.
Yeah, right? They were like, E what? It's like, don't worry about it. Just keep going forward.
Yeah, maybe put an overdub on that part. It's like if you don't want to listen to the chess nerd stuff, scroll 5 more minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Guys, there will be a ton of links down below. Shai Hulud is going over to Europe. They're hitting a fair amount of countries and stuff, and I'm sure you'll be able to see them there. Like my friend has said here, they also will have a Japan announcement. I don't have many viewers in Japan, but for my few that do, please show out, say hello, buy some merch, sing some songs, and yeah, until next time. Peace, guys.